There's a powerful scene from the movie Zorro with Antonio Banderas as the young Zorro and Anthony Hopkins as the old Zorro, and they're in the Zorro cave or the Zorro retreat somewhere, and he's teaching the young Zorro all the skills of being this almost superhero person with behind the mask. And on the floor is this circle that's just as large as one's arm span, tip to tip, of fingertip to fingertip. And that's sort of the first circle of control that the Zorro character learns. And so you're in this crazy world that's run by corrupt politicians stealing ballots out of ballot boxes as part of what the larger plot is about. And yet you've got this retreat you can go to, and you can create this circle that is your control, and then a circle further out that is the length of the Zorro whip from the center. And that's the second ring of control and training the Zorro character. So I think we all need to establish our circles and say, within this circle, I'm free. Within this circle, I am sustainable. We can build our ideals, starting small and then going out from there.
I totally feel you. As a matter of fact, it's kind of what I've been doing myself in Philly and in Bucks County. I know two different groups. I'm basically a part of, I've signed all the official documents where my wife and I are both official volunteer members of this one organization, and we are trying to get a Earthship built inside of Philadelphia. If anyone that doesn't know what Earthships are, just look up earthship.com. But in a nutshell, it's very quick. It's sustainable housing made out of recycled materials, and you get all your food created out of hydroponics, and you get energy out of solar and or wind, depending on what your setup is, as well as water catch systems to run all of your water and such. And these types of ideas are being repressed because they could cause so many cripplings of the different aspects of our society. Like, we need plumbers and pipe fitters and architects and engineers here and carpenters there. And it would take for everyone to then learn how to build their own Earthships and become sustainable would then make those people not necessarily necessary in society. And we'd wind up leaving the specialization society and get more into the idea of like what Robert Hyland joked at, where our specialization is for insects and everyone needs to know how to do all these different things in life. They just need to.
I think one of the things we're learning in these last few years is how much society or the dominant paradigm grinds to a halt when the banking and home loan industry grinds to a halt. I mean, if you had people building their own houses out of essentially garbage, used tires, cans, bottles, etc., like Michael Reynolds does for Earthships, and there's a great documentary out called Garbage Warrior that he's in, and he has in a scene there he's talking about what it's like to wake up in the morning when you own your home free and clear, and it provides your energy and it provides much of your food, and you think, wow, what should I do today? It's a great little piece about freedom within the context of architecture.
Exactly. I truly find, like, when I first saw these things, I was actually just looking for a way that I could escape money and as well as provide for a future for my son. And I was just like, wow, if I can figure out how to build these things for myself, I can teach that to my boy. And then literally we could start teaching everyone else about it. And it's just the idea of expanding that circle of freedom really struck a chord with me when you said it, because of my beliefs in the Earthship projects. Because again, once we get something like that going, we can teach everyone else how to do it, and eventually we don't need money anymore, and poof, we all can create our own careers that don't need to rely on the daily grind. It's just no longer necessary. We're now functioning as a real civilization.
That's what makes it such a wonderfully radical idea. That's great.
Yeah, somebody else is just saying they don't have money in Star Trek and look into the Venus Project, someone else said, and these are other great, like the Venus Project is like this expansive city version for anyone who doesn't know that the Zeitgeist movement is all about trying to get created, and it's basically a citywide version of the personal idea of the Earthship.
Yes, that's taking it to the biggest circle. So if we want to start with a circle that's as big as our own home, we can build an Earthship. And then if enough of us do that, we can expand it from there. I guess another model, I don't know if this is a good time to segue, another model of communicating truth to people who have maybe resisted it up to a certain point in time is the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of death or grief. 5 stages of death or 5 stages of grief. And I think people who have become truthers can probably go back in their own life stories and think, oh, yes, I had a period of denial, and I had a period of anger, and I had a period of bargaining about this particular truth, and depression, and finally, maybe not acceptance, but accepting of it as true, if not accepting of it as what I want to see in the world. And so those 5 stages, it's good to be aware of as you're talking to somebody. You realize, I'm not going to get them immediately to acceptance today. They're still in denial. But keeping those stages in mind.
I didn't even think of that. That's a very. What were who created those that concept again?
This is Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was one of the first people to actually study death as a process. Most doctors and psychologists avoided it because it was depressing up until like the late 60s or mid 60s. She actually talked with people, accepted, and nobody would talk to a patient about the fact that they were dying, and she would do that and ask them what they wanted to do before, and you know, it's also like,
and so she just noticed that
you would do things
right on. So she noticed that these were just the things that everyone went through.
Yes, she would see at least an element of each of those 5, and it helped to kind of keep track of where the patients were in their process by having this model of 5 stages. And it really does apply to any loss or any kind of a grieving process, to at least a small extent. I mean, there's trivial things like you lost a $10 bill or something. You can just kind of you might go through those stages in about 5 or 10 seconds. Unless you're in a bad mood that day, it might take a little longer. But I think if you look at any kind of loss, those elements are there, and I think realizing some of the negative truths, like the loss of free press. I mean, there's all these illusions that we think we have, like just a 2-party system or a representative government or free press, and we don't. And that's
that corporations are there to actually just help get jobs to people, not actually out for profits. No, we're there to help you.
So there's this reality that we who are truthers have pretty much kind of see that that's not the way it is. And so for us, we don't really understand the loss, the grief that the person we're communicating to, unless we remember how it was for us when we first became disabused of those notions. So we need to realize that it takes time for people to work from that one worldview through those 5 stages to realize, oh, really, at a conscious level, the facts seem to fit this hypothesis that there's not really a democracy in this country anymore. And yeah, I'm really angry about that, and I can't talk about anything about my anger about it for a while.
It's hardly even a representative republic anymore. It's totally understandable, that anger. And I think maybe even I would go so far as to say, could we have theoretically been so far as a country in the denial process still, even as late as the 70s, that it finally took someone like Howard Beale in the movie Network yelling, "You've got to get mad," to get humanity to that next step of anger? And then how many
I
people,
think
as you say, just hit the snooze alarm too? But that's besides the point.
well, there's a number of points in history where corruption happened. I mean, certainly 1963 with the assassination of JFK was one point. The Watergate was another one in the early 70s, 73, 74. And I think that even this year, the BP oil spill was a huge one for a lot of people to realize just how negligent a large company like BP could be in terms of it could destroy the whole fucking ecosphere. Sorry, are we governed by
No,
FCC rules?
No, we are totally allowed to curse. Specifically, the talk show has told me we're not allowed to do anything pornographic. So yeah, but we are allowed to curse. Yes, I understand it. Like, and this is, since we're talking about anger, this is maybe the right time to be like, I'm mad as hell, or fuck, this sucks. You know, like even Derek Jensen puts it, like, we're fucked. You look around and you see the runaway train that civilization is, and you just start to think there's so many different levels where we're just fucked, and not in a good way.
Right. I mean, I hear people talking about, oh, we have to throw every incumbent out of Congress, and I feel like, yeah, they're kind of coming from that anger stage. I mean, they're not really strategizing and going through the bargaining part. They're just, that's an anger reaction right there. And so I mean, I can see one application of this model right there.
No, totally. Well, what was the third one then? It was denial, anger, and then
bargaining, depression,
bargaining, bargaining. Yeah, people do a lot of bargaining with government and corporations and so on and so forth. And how do we keep the system going, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I take this minimum wage job, and yeah.
Yeah, I've gone through that myself. Like, I'm half about ready to go back to like just finding anything where I'm even just delivering pizzas or working in a bakery or something, just because I'm at a point where I don't know what's going to happen next as far as like money coming in. Like, and I think I'm not the only person that's feeling this. Like, I'm not about to go ape shit and go crazy, like, say, in the movie Falling Down, but I'm understanding when people do that sort of thing. Like, I was even, like, robbed in a back alley once by two guys with a gun and pistol whipped, and they only took the money I had on me, which is like $13, and the delivery that I was taking to the house as a pizza driver with a couple wings. And it was very easy for me to forgive them after about a week's worth of serious anger and maybe even some depression. But at a certain point, it kind of hit me that the entirety of the conspiracy that I have seen of what society is kind of has forced them into doing these desperate acts in order to just try and survive.
That's true. That's going to a level of compassion I think that a lot of people don't quite reach. But that's you're absolutely right.
And someone just asked me in the chat room if non-whites were the ones that robbed me, and unfortunately, yes, it's true, they were not. But I really don't care about that. I understand that it's not a racial issue, it's a social, economic issue. These are the factors that people need to pay attention to. I don't care whether that guy lived in my neighborhood or in a poor neighborhood, or I don't care what color the guy was. What I pay attention to is whether he was brought up in my neighborhood versus a poor neighborhood. Like, that's what really made me recognize, as I'm like taking my son to school the next day, after this happened to me, I'm on a bus going through North Philly, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, if I was in this slum, I might want to go out and rob people too in order to get out of this situation, or to just get something out of the situation that life has dealt me at that moment. It's a horrible thing to think that, like, you may have to rob someone just to get your next meal or to feed your child. I mean, this is like Les Mis. I mean, wasn't Les Mis even all about like Jean Valjean? He was being chased by this cop the entire show because he stole a loaf of bread for his daughter, and this was all during like the French Revolution. Like this is a very close to home idea for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jean Valjean, Les Miserables. I think that it's a Broadway show that resonated with a lot of people, and as well as the story. But yeah.
So after bargaining, after bargaining, what came next again?
That's depression, and then
Depression.
finally acceptance. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. These are all definitely the different aspects I have slowly gone through in order to get myself to where I am over various different subjects, specifically the whole, not just the robbery, but like just growing out of the old belief system that I had.
And that is probably the biggest obstacle for truthing, is people realize that if this is true, there's going to be that depression stage in there somewhere. This is, I mean, that makes it hard to communicate the darker truths, like the conspiracies and wars and depleted uranium, all of these really horrible things, as opposed to the lighter truths about our spiritual nature and evidence that our consciousness is continued beyond the bodies that we're in at this point in time. That stuff is kind of like the icing that helps make it all possible. It gives us strength to deal with all this. So that's, I guess I've kind of come to the end of the models that I have for understanding the difficulty of communicating these truths. Now I guess that I have a few items that I call the tips for truthers that come from the article that originally got us started on the idea for this show, Where in Truth Does One Start? And I don't know if you want, we could go over some of the concepts in that column. We've already touched on part of it. One was to tell your story, because stories often go across, at least initially, much more easily than a deductive kind of argument. People are more receptive to a story. One was to not pose as an expert yourself when you can refer to experts, and so, if people think that all this counter information is coming directly from you, they can dismiss you as an individual. It becomes more of a straw man argument. Or get those materials to them from experts. Then, it's more powerful because it's coming at them from more directions, and it is with more credentials. And of course, ignore that if you actually happen to be an expert on some of these topics. So